So now that we have the iWorkflow platform licensed and up and running, let's have a quick overview of the user interface. So we're just going to log back in now to iWorkflow as admin, using the credentials we set before in the setup. Now that we're logged in, notice at the top right hand, administrator. This is to show that the role I'm in is actually an administrator of iWorkflow. It has two personas and they have very different interfaces. So the administrator of the platform creates the environment, it creates tenants, it creates catalogs, and it adds the application services templates to those catalogs. Whereas the administrator also adds the big IP devices, which is the destinations for these application service templates, and can do far more. However, the administrator cannot actually deploy application delivery policy. So that is the role of the tenant once the administrator has set up the environment. So you notice the way the menu system works from where I'm clicking around the screen now. We have the system, device, and cloud tab from the top up there, and then here we have where we create and define the environment for daily use. So we have system, we'll just go back here, and what we can do now is create a new user. So under access control, let's create a new user so we can show you the tenant interface. So I'm just gonna, you'll see the admin user on the left. You'll notice it says local. It's because I'm not using any off-box authentication systems right now. So we'll create a new user1 user and set this up, and we're gonna build ourselves a new tenant with a catalog against it. So this is just an operations user that is going to be responsible for deploying application delivery policy as and when needed. We just set its password there and add that user. And then you also notice in this section, the system and then access control there, we can also create groups and roles. Right now, you'll see we've not done any of these. The only role at the moment is the administrator role. So we'll just jump out of here. Let's take a quick look at roles. So you'll see it's pretty granular. In fact, right down at the REST API that we can even specify whether they're just consuming or actually setting and changing things. Notice the get, post, put, patch methods. We'll go more into that in a different episode. And then groups, you'll notice the only one at the moment for the auth provider is local. You can add other external authentication providers. We'll go into that more also in another episode. So before we go any further, let's just have a quick overview again. So there's two personas. I've talked about this before, where we have the administrative persona of iWorkflow, where that's the person that's setting up the environment, that's adding the devices, creating the connectors, creating the catalogs. Then we have the tenants, which you can see across the top right. So these are the people logging and deploying the application services templates. So they are presented with the catalog and with destination big IPs and environments that they can distribute the application services among. So we have the application services, we have the connectors at the bottom. You'll see Cisco APIC, VMware NSX, or just local big IPs in a traditional environment. And then we have the integration SDK. We'll dedicate a number of episodes to the integration SDK. This is where we get some unparalleled extensibility in how we can communicate with other technologies or directly with the iWorkflow platform. So let's go and create more of this environment. Let's add a device, something for the iWorkflow platform to deploy its application policy onto. So we're going to do we're in the cloud section now by iWorkflow. I logged in as an administrator. So let's add in the administrative IP address of our big IP for our lab environment. We have the 10.128.1.128. Just to prove there's no trickery or magic going on, let's log into that big IP and just show that it's actually void of configuration. All I have done for my lab environment is actually give it IP addresses, so it has nothing above layer 3. You'll see there's two self IP addresses there. That is for the server side and client side networks. but that is all going to the network map, not a single object has been created on top of that. So we haven't actually deployed any applications. We've merely plugged the big IP in and given it some IP addresses so I can reach it. So here we go, back to iWorkflow. Now this is important, management software update. What it's actually going to do is update the REST framework on my big IP. So if it needs to do that to extend a bit of the communication required to do its job properly, it will do that, and it will give you a warning before it does. So it's actually something I don't think I've mentioned so far is the licensing section. So under licensing on the right-hand side, we can actually handle license pooling as well. We'll get to that in another episode. So now we can take a look at our big IP. You'll notice at the top there, it actually says device is unhealthy. That's because it's still doing its discovering and adding on. We got the REST version 12.1 and the big IP build 11.6.0 with hotfit 6. For this particular one, there's not a lot of information to share right now. You'll see on the left-hand side there, it still says collecting. This is still going through part of the discovery and adoption process. So once, we'll leave it alone for a moment there to do its thing, but once that's been done, we can then add in tenants and clouds, etc. Clouds being the connectors for how we deploy policy. So what it's doing now is chatting over this management network. It's talking to the big IP on 10.128.1.128, a little bit of chat back and forth, collecting some stats, collecting the IAPs that are on that box. Looks like it's done now. We'll double click. There it is, available in green. The REST framework has been upgraded, so it's got a little more functionality. It needs to do its job properly there. So now we need to add in the connector, the means to allow the tenant to communicate and deploy application delivery policy onto the IP. So on the left-hand side, we'll go to clouds. Cloud being obviously a pool of resources that can be used. We're going to add a tenant to that afterwards. So let's go create a new cloud. We'll give that a name. I guess my cloud will be for today. So this is going to be our environment. It's going to be a local environment for big IPs. Let's just pretend this is a production data center in a private environment. So by private, I mean not a public cloud environment. This is a pretty vanilla environment. So connector type. Now you'll notice a few different flavors in there. Cisco APIC, for example. Big IP, that also includes the Viprion. And now you'll see there's only one in there that really matches that type, and it's the one we just added. You hit the little plus sign there if you needed to add some more in. We don't have any more to add for this particular connector. So moving right along, we'll hit save now, and now we have finished that step. Let's add in our tenant. So my tenant, the inspirational naming standards I use here. Again, the tenant is the presentation of application service policies that can be deployed. Now this could be to a user logging into the iWorkflow GUI as a tenant, or it might be programmatically done through the REST API. So it's the collection of application service templates that we'll set up and add in a later episode. So here we are. We have our tenant with a cloud already on there. So again, just a quick recap, we've got the administrative persona who set up the platform. We've got the tenants that were set up by the administrator, and they're able to deploy via the connectors into an environment. In this example, we used the big IP.